Good evening. Welcome to the Fright Files. My name is Chris Harmon, but you can call me Dr. Fright. Now, tonight we will take a look at 7 frightful tales, ranging from the least frightful to the most frightful of them all. Now, before we begin, I need you to ask yourself one very important question. Can you withstand all 7 frightful tales till the end? Tonight's tales will be a little bit more frightful than some in the past, because now we go deeper into the dark side. Our first story I'd like to present to you is called Whispers in the Mist. Now, you see, in the small coastal town of Raven's Hollow, the sea mist rolls in thick and heavy each night, swallowing the streets in a shroud of fog. The townspeople have long learned to respect the fog, locking their doors and shuttering their windows as soon as the sun dips below the horizon. Now, for generations, stories have been told of voices carried on the mist, ghostly whispers that lure the unsuspecting into the darkness, never to be seen or heard from again. Savannah Gray, a skeptic and an aspiring journalist, arrives in Rivers Hollow to investigate these legends for an article she's writing on urban myths. Confident that the stories are nothing more than superstition, she is determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious disappearances that have plagued the town for over a century. Savannah checks into the only hotel in town, a quiet but worn establishment overlooking the horizon, overlooking the harbor. Now, the innkeeper, a stern woman named Mrs. Winston's eyes, with her suspicion when Savannah mentions her reason for visiting. You do best to leave the stores alone. The fog doesn't take kindly to outsiders picking their noses where they don't belong. Undeterred, Savannah spends her first day exploring the town, interviewing locals who mostly refuse to speak of the fog and the whispers. The few who do talk share chilling accounts of loved ones visiting into the mist, vanishing completely to the unknown, lured by voices that sound eerily familiar. Now, here's where things get darker, folks, because you see, that evening, Savannah decides to experience the fog for herself. Armed with a voice recorder and a flashlight, she ventures out to the sun and sets. She ventures out as the sun sets and the first tendrils of mist creep into the streets. The air grows cold and damp, the fog thickening rapidly until visibility is reduced to a mere feet. As she walks down the deserted main street, she hears nothing but the distant looping of waves against the docks. Minutes and minutes pass as Savannah begins to think the tales are indeed just stories meant to scare children. But then, faintly, at first, she hears it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper carried on the damp air. She stops and listens intently. The whisper comes again, cleaner this time, and to her astonishment, it sounds like her late mother's voice, tender and loving. Savannah, Savannah, come here. Come here, sweetheart. Come here. Savannah, 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 Savannah. Her heart skips a beat. Her mother had passed away years ago, and hearing her voice now sends a chill down her spine. She rationalizes it as her mind playing tricks, a result of the eerie atmosphere. But the voices come again, more instant. Savannah, I've missed you. Follow me. Savannah, follow me. Follow me. Savannah! Against her better judgment, Savannah follows the sound, turning down a narrow alley that leads towards the docks. The fog grows deeper, more denser, swirling around her in a ghostly pattern. Her flashlight flickers, casting long, distorted shadows onto the cobblestone path. The voice leads her further away into the maze of alleys, each one darker and more confirming than the last. Along the way, her voices in Along the way, other voices join in, other voices come in, other voices, other voices. There are other voices. A chorus of whispers calling her name. Savannah, 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 Savannah. Some familiar, others strange and unsettling. They surround her, disorienting. They surround her, disorienting and hypnotic. Savannah realizes she's lost. The familiar structures of the town had vanished into the fog, replaced by decaying buildings and twisted alleyways that shouldn't even exist. Panic sets in, and as she tries to reduce her steps, but every turn leads her deeper and deeper and deeper into the unknown. The whispers grow louder, closer, now echoing directly beside her ears. She feels a cold breath on her neck, a cold spine chilling breath going down her neck, and she spins around, but sees nothing except an intense, heavy fog. Soon her flashlight dies completely, plunging her into the darkness, her heart pounding and pounding and pounding. She fumbles for a phone to use, but she cannot find it. She can't even get her flashlight to work, but it has no signal. The phone, when she finally digs it out, it has no signal, and the battery drains rapidly. Before shutting off entirely, surrounded by darkness and whispers, Savannah starts to run, her footsteps echoing loudly on the wet streets, on the wet stones. As she runs, shadows materialize in the fog, indistinct figures that move alongside her, their forms flickering in and out of existence. One steps directly into her line of sight. Thin forms flickering in and out of existence. One steps directly into her path, and she crashes into it, falling hard onto the ground. Looking up, she sees the shadows looming over her, the shadows hanging over her. Its features become cleaner, a grotesque, twisted version of her mother's face, eyes hollow, mouth stretched into unnatural grin. Stay with us, Savannah. Stay with us. Stay with us. Stay with us. It croons its voices a distorted mockery of her mother's. Join us in the mist. Join us in the mist. Join us, Savannah. Join us. Savannah screams and scrambles backwards, only to feel cold, clammy hands grabbing her at the form, grabbing her at her forms, all sides. The shadows close in, the faces contorted in nightmares, voices overlapping in a modern symphony. She musters all of her strength and breaks free, sprinting blindly through the fog. Her lungs burn out, her legs ache, but she refuses to stop, driven by the sheer terror. Finally, she bursts through the walls of the mist and collapses onto a familiar street. illuminated by the warm glow of street lamps. The fog recoils behind her, returning as if repelled by the light. Gasping for breath, Savannah looks around and realizes she's back near the inn. The streets are still empty, but the oppressive presence that has lifted. She staggers back to her room and locks the door, trembling uncontrollably as the whispers fade into silence. The next morning, the sun shines brightly over Raven's Hollow, the town appearing peaceful and calm. Savannah, still shaken, decides to leave immediately, abandoning her investigation. She hastily packs her belongings and heads downstairs, where Mrs. Winshire awaits with a knowing look. Had a rough night, did we? The innkeeper asked, her eyes scrutinizing Savannah's pale face and trembling hands. Savannah nods silently, too exhausted and frightened to respond. As she drives away from the Raven's Hollow, relief washes over her. With each mile she puts between herself and the cursed town, she vows never, ever to return, and contemplates giving up her pursuit of the paranormal altogether. That night, safely back into her apartment in the city, Savannah tries to relax, convincing herself that the horror she expected was a mix of overactive imagination and local hysteria. She prepares for bed, eager to put the nightmare behind her. But as she drifts to sleep, a familiar sound pulls her back into the wakefulness. A soft whispering echo through the bedroom. Savannah! Savannah! We're still here, Savannah! We're still here! We're still here, Savannah! Her eyes snapped open, and she sees tinder of fog seeping in through the cracks around her window and under the door, swirling and all over her. At the foot of her bed, the shadows emerge once more, their faces grinning wickedly as they advance towards her. The realization hits her with cold dead. The fog has followed her, and there is no escaping the whispers. The spirits of Raven Hollow had claimed her, and no matter where she runs, they will always find her, always find her. They will always find her, drawing her back into the eternal mist from where there is no return. No return. The last thing Savannah sees before darkness consumes her is the twisted, hollow face of her mother's, leaning close, whispering softly, "Welcome home, my darling. Welcome home." Wasn't that a scary tale to tell? Would you go into the mist and take your chances? That brings us to our next case, our next frightful story. I call this the horrifying cold case. Detective Evelyn Carter has seen her share of unsolved cases, but the one that had haunted her for years was the disappearance of Aubrey Palmer. Audrey Palmer had vanished without a trace 5 years ago on a cold autumn night. The small town of Millwood had never been the same, its streets shrewd by whispers and suspicious. Evelyn had promised Aubrey's mother she would find the truth, but the case had gone cold with no leads until now. A call comes in late one evening as Evelyn sat at her desk, staring at Audrey's old case files. The voice on the other end was garbled, as if the person was speaking through a bad connection. But the message was clear. I know where she is. Meet me at the old mill at midnight. Evelyn's heart raced. The old mill was abandoned, a crumbling relic of the town's industrial past. It was also notorious for its eerie atmosphere, with locals claiming to hear strange noises and see shadowy figures around it at night. But Evelyn wasn't one to believe in ghost stories. No, she was a detective, and she followed the evidence, no matter how strange. Now you see, as midnight approached, Evelyn drove to the mill, her mind buzzing with anticipation and dread. The town was quiet, the streets empty, as if the entire population was holding its breath. When she arrived at the mill, the fog was thick, clinging to the ground like a shroud. The building loomed ahead, its windows dark and broken. The once proud structure, now a skeletal remains of a forgotten era. Evelyn parked her car and stepped out, the cold biting through her coat. She shone her flashlight towards the entrance, saw a faint light flickering inside, casting a long, distorted shadow on the walls. As she approached, the heavy wooden doors creaked open, revealing a narrow corridor that led deeper into the mill. The air inside was musty, filled with the scent of damp wood and rusting metal. Her footsteps echoed off the walls as she ventured further in, the light ahead guiding her like a beacon. As she turned corner, the light flickered out and went, plunging into her darkness. She paused, staring at it. Silence occurred all over. A creak of wood behind her made her spin out around her. A creak of wood behind her made her spin around, her head instinctively reaching for her gun. But there was nothing, nothing, just the empty corridor streaking back into the gloom. She turned back, only to find the light ahead had returned, now stronger and more instant, almost as if it was pulling her forward. Evelyn followed the light until she reached a large open room, filled with old machinery, its hulking shapes barely visible into the dim glow. Into the center of the room was an old wooden chair, and sitting on it was a man she didn't recognize. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow, and his clothes were ragged. He held a small, flickering lantern in one hand, and the other hand resting on his lap. Who are you? Who are you? Evelyn demanded, her voice firm despite the tensions calling in her chest. The man looked up, his eyes locking onto hers. You don't remember me, do you, detective? His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. You don't remember me, do you? But been looking for me. You've been looking for me for a long time. Evelyn's mind raced, trying to place his face, but nothing came to her. No, I don't know you, she said, taking a cautious step forward, her hand still on her gun. But if you know where Aubrey is, you'll need to tell me now. The man smiled, a cold, mirthless expression that sent a shiver down her spine. Aubrey isn't lost, detective. She is right here in this very room. Evelyn's blood ran stone cold. She scanned the room with her flashlight, the beam daring over the machinery, the walls, the floors, but there was nothing, no sign of Aubrey or anyone else. You're lying, she said, her voice hardening. If this is some kind of a sick, twisted, freaking joke, it ain't no joke to me. The man interrupted his smile. Aubrey is here. She's been here all along, waiting for you to find her. Evelyn's heart pounded as she approached the man, her flashlight beam steady on his face. Where is she? She demanded, her voice deception, raising with desperation. The man didn't answer. The man never answered. Instead, he slowly raised his hand and pointed to the corner of the room where a large old trunk sat, covered in dust and cobwebs. Evelyn's stomach twisted with dread, but she forced herself to walk over to the trunk, her flashlight shaking slightly in her grip. She hesitated for a moment, then knelt down and brushed away the dust. The trunk was heavy, its lid slightly ajar. Evelyn took a deep breath, steering herself, and then lifted the lid. Inside, she saw the remains of a body, long decomposed, its clothes tattered, its discolored. A small silver locket lay amongst the bones, its chair broken. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the locket. It was the one Aubrey had worn the night before she disappeared. Evelyn stumbled back to her. Evelyn stumbled back, her mind reeling. The man's voice echoed in the room, soft and eerie. I told you, detective. I told you. I told you. I told you. Audrey is here. Audrey is here. She turned back to the man, but the chair was empty. He had vanished, leaving shadows growing darker, more oppressive. She felt a chill down her spine as a voice, low and guttural, whispered in her ear, You should have left it alone. You should have left it alone. Now you're gonna join her. You're gonna join her. Evelyn spun around, her flashlight cutting through the darkness, but there was no one here, no one there. Panic surged around through her as she realized the truth. The man hadn't been real. He was a ghost, a manifestation of the evil that had taken Aubrey and now sought to claim her as well. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows growing thicker and more solid. The air turned frigid, and Evelyn felt an icy hand brush against her cheek. She battled, she battled for the door, her heart racing, but the exit seemed impossibly far away. The shadows followed her, whispering her name, mocking her, taunting her with Aubrey's fate. Evelyn burst out onto the mill and into the cold night air, her breath coming in rugged gasps. She didn't stop running until she reached her car, throwing herself inside and locking the doors. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white as she tried to calm herself. She forced herself to lock the back of the mill, half expecting to see the man standing in the doorway, grinning that cold, empty smile. But the building was dark and silent, the only movement coming from the swaying trees in the wind. Evelyn drove back to the station in a daze, her mind replaying the night's events over and over and over and over and over. Back to the station in a daze, her mind replaying the night's events over and over. When she arrived, she found herself empty, the lights dimmed for the night. She made her way to the desk and collapsed into the chair, staring blankly at Audrey's case file. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw a text from an unknown caller. The message was brief. Did you find what you were looking for? Evelyn read it again. Did you find what you're looking for? Her blood ran cold, her hands trembled as she typed out a reply. Who is this? A moment later, the reply came. Aubrey. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Her hands hovered over the phone, unsure of what to do. She wanted to believe it was a cruel joke, a prank, but someone who knew about the case. But deep down she knew the truth. She looked up and froze. Reflected in the dark window behind her, she saw Aubrey standing in the shadows, her face pale and hollow, her eyes fixed on Evelyn with an instantaneous that made her blood run cold. Standing in the shadows, her face pale, eyes hollow, and her eyes fixated on Evelyn with an intensity that made her blood run so darn cold. She spun around, but there was no one there. The room was empty, silent, except for the sound of her own breathing. The phone buzzed again, and she slowly turned back to it, dread and curling in her stomach. The message was from the same unknown caller, same number. It was just the one word, and that word was soon. Evelyn dropped the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a presence behind her, cold and malevolent, and the whisper starting again, soft and intense. Aubrey was still out there, trapped between the worlds, and now she had found Evelyn. The case wasn't cold anymore. It was just the beginning. That was our second frightful tale of the night. And now, as we go to the chat room, to thank all of our frightful fans in attendance. I want to thank everybody here and everybody watching at home as we now take a more darker plunge to our third frightful tale of the evening. This tale I like to call The Whispering Walls. You see, on the outskirts of a small town, Grayshire, stood a grand, disappointed mansion. Its once proud facade was now draped in ivy and shadow, with broken windows that stared out like empty eyes. The townsfolk avoided the mansion, speaking of it only in hushed tones, for it was said that the walls within whispered secrets, secrets that had driven the previous owners to madness before they vanished without a trace. The mansion had grown empty for years, its grand halls and parlors left to rot and decay. But the legend of the whispering walls persisted, a story passed down from through generations, warning curiously souls to stay away. Now you see, Amelia was not one to heed such warnings. A girl of 15 with a love for mysteries and a thirst for adventure, she had spent much of her young life exploring the forgotten corners of the town, abandoned buildings, overgrown gardens, and the like. The mansion, with its grim reputation and eerie silence, was a challenge she could not resist. One stormy afternoon, when the sky was thick with dark clouds and the wind howled through the trees, Amelia set out to explore the mansion. The front gate, rusty and creaking, gave way with a push, and she walked up the overgrown path to the front door. The door was massive, made of dark wood, its surface scorned by time. It cracked loudly as she pushed it open, revealing a dark, dusty interior. The mansion was even more decayed than she had imagined. The grand floor, once a place of elegance, was covered in a thick layer of dust. The air was cold, carrying the faint scent of mildew and decay. Amelia's footsteps echoed as she walked through the empty halls, her eyes scanning the folded wallpaper, the broken furnace, and the cobwebs that hung from the ceiling like ghostly curtains. And as she moved deeper into the mansion, she began to hear it, the faintness of sounds like distorted whispers just beyond the edge of her hearing. She paused, straining to listen, but the whispers faded into the silence. Shaking her head, she continued on, dismissing the sound as nothing more than the wind playing tricks on her mind. But the further she went, the louder the whispers become. They seemed to follow her, growing more distinct, though she still couldn't make out the words. It was a it was as if the walls themselves were speaking, murmuring secrets just beyond her. Understand, a shiver ran down her spine, but the curiosity drove her forward. The whispers led her to a room at the very end of the mansion, a room she had never heard mentioned in any of the stories. The door was ajar, and as she pushed it open, she was met with a burst of cold air that sent a chill through her bones. The room was dark, the only light coming from the stormy sky outside, filtering through a small grind over covered window. The walls of the room were unlike any other she had seen in the mansion. They were covered in a strange faded symbols, circles, lines, and patterns that made no sense to her. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something darker, something more darker than ever before. And as she stepped inside, the whispers raced through it, filling her mind with fragmented thoughts and images that weren't her own. Amelia clutched her head, trying trying to block out the noise, but the whispers only grew louder, more intense. Flashes of the mansions passed and flooded into her mind. She saw them, images shifted or growing darker. Shadows moved to the halls, creeping along the walls like living things. She saw the terrified faces of the mansion's former inhabitants, their eyes with fear and their mouths open in silent screams. The whispers become voices, each one distinct yet bleeding into a terrible chorus. They spoke of betrayal, of anger, of darkness that had once held the mansion up and refused to let go. The walls seemed to pulse with energy draining closer, drawing closer and closer and closer, as if they were alive, feeding on her face. Panic gripped Amelia as she realized the truth. The whispers were the trapped souls of those who had lived in the mansion, their spirits bound to the walls by a dark curse. They were desperate to be heard, to be seen, to be free, and as they had chosen her as the vessel. The walls began to close in on her, symbols glowing faintly with a sickly light. The whispers were now screams echoing in her mind, filling her with the pain of despair. She turned to run, but the doors slammed shut. The sounds like a gunshot in the silent room. She was trapped. Amelia pounded on the door, screaming and screaming, joining the voices in the room, but there was no escape, no escape, no escape. The walls pressed closer, the whispers driving into her mind, becoming fragmented with her body, growing cold. The last thing she heard before everything went dark was the sound of her own voice, now a part of the darkness, part of the endless, whispering as her soul was abandoned into the walls. The mansion remained empty, its secrets locked away behind the decaying walls. The whispers continued faintly but persistent, waiting for the next curious soul to venture inside. The townspeople still spoke of the mansion, warning their children to stay away, but there was no one even dared to enter. The walls of the mansion held too many secrets, and the only whispered to anyone brave enough to listen. Thank you for making it this far into the Fright Files, but don't go nowhere. If you're still here, let's see if you can survive our next frightful tale. I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Joanne Stewart, hello. Welcome to the Fright Files. Stay if you want to. Survive if you're lucky. This next story is called The Vanishing Room. Welcome back. Unfortunately, I was hearing voices coming all around me, and I could smell the scent of perfume. I think this next story may be in this room with me. So let's see if we can get answers, as I call this next frightful tale The Vanishing Room. And I gotta warn you, this story is not for those with a weak heart. You see, in the heart of a modern city, there stands an old towering apartment building that has witnessed the passage of time for over a century. The residents have come and gone, but there is one thing they all know: never stay in room 714. You see stories of people disappearing, never to be seen or heard from again. These stories circulate like an urban legend, passed down from tenant to tenant. The room's reputation is so sinister that it's even been sealed off for years. The key lost and the door bolted shut, but when Nathan, a young journalist eager for a breakthrough story, moves into the building, he becomes obsessed with the uncovering the truth behind the legends. His heart and whispers. He's heard the whispers from his neighbors. He's seen the way their faces pale at the mere mention of room 714. And he's determined to find out what really happened there. Nathan's curiosity turns into an obsession. He spends hours in the building, dusty archives, reading old news articles and police reports about the room. The more he learns, the more bizarre the stories become. A couple who moved in and vanished without a trace. A reclusive artist who was never seen again after lurking himself inside of it, and a series of unexpected disappearances stretching back decades. One night, as Nathan is poring over his notes in the building, he discovers a hidden compartment in the walls inside. He finds himself an old rusty key labeled 714. His heart races as he realizes what he's found. Despite the warnings, he decided to unlock the door and see for himself what lies beyond. At midnight, Nathan stands before the doors of room 714, the hallways eerie quiet, and the air heavy with anticipation. With a deep breath, he inserts the key to the lock and turn. The door creaks open, revealing a room bathed in dim, flickering light. The room is surprisingly ordinary at first glance, the furnishings with old dusty furniture and faded wallpaper. But there was something off about the place, a feeling that the walls are watching him. And as Nathan steps inside, the door swings shut behind him, and then lock clicks back in place. He tries to turn the knob, but it won't budge. He's locked in. As Nathan explores the room, he begins to notice strange details. The furniture is irrigated and odd angles. The shadows on the walls didn't match the objects casting them, and the light bulb flickering erratically, casting eerie patterns across the ceiling. He feels a growing sense of unease, as if the room is alive, pulsing with a negative, malevolent energy. Nathan's gaze falls on large Nathan's gaze falls on a large animated mirror hanging on the walls. The gloss is cloudy, the reflection distorted. He approaches it curiously, his reflection glowing behind him, a shadowy silhouette with no discernible features. He spins around, but there's no one there. When he turns back to the mirror, the figure is gone. He tries to calm his racing heart, convincing himself it's just his imagination playing tricks on him. But the room's atmosphere grows thicker, the air heavily with a sense of dread. Suddenly, the walls begin to close in. The room is shrinking around him. The mirror starts to glow with an unnatural light, and the reflections of the room warps and twists. Nathan watches in horror as his reflection steps out of the mirror. As his reflection steps out of the mirror, a perfect copy of him, but with hollow eyes instead. Now the doppelganger grins and steps towards him. Nathan backs away, his heart pounding in his chest, but there is nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nothing to hide. The walls have chosen. The walls have chosen. The walls have closed in, trapping him between the mirrors and the sinister reflection. Nathan's reaction reaches out, grabbing him by the throat and dropping him towards the miner. He struggles, but the doppelganger is impossibly strong. Its grip cold and uneven, unnecessary, odd feelings. As Nathan is pulled closer to the mirror, he sees his reflection begin to emerge with the glass, his body becoming translucent, folding into the mirror surface. The last thing Nathan sees is his own terrified face, now trapped behind the glass of the doppelganger. The room returns to its original size, the door unlocking with a soft click. The doppelganger grins one last time before turning and leaving the room, locking the door behind him. The next morning, the building residents notice a new tenant in Nathan's apartment. He looks like Nathan, but talks like Nathan, but there's something unsettling about it. His eyes are cold, devoid of the warmth once held. He never mentions room 714 when he asks about it. He just smiles, the same eerie smile, the same eerie grin. Nathan's disappearance became another unsolved mystery, the last thing anybody expected. The building's residents returns to their routines, whispers, rumors, and speculations, but no one dares to investigate further. And in the now locked room 714, the mirror stands silent. One still, the mirror stands silent and still, its surface and smooth and unbroken. But if you look closely, you might catch a glimpse of a face trapped inside, screaming silently for help, forever lost in the vanishing room. I want to thank everybody in the chat room and everybody here in attendance. You have just heard another frightful tale. But folks, we have two terrifying stories to tell you tonight. Two terrifying stories that will send chills up your spine, all over your body. For those who are still with us, thank you for being fans of the Fright Files. For those watching elsewhere, it's best not to be alone. This next story I like to call The Haunting of Meadowbrook Drive. In the heat of the suburbs where every house looks almost the same, there is one house on Meadowbrook Drive that everyone avoids. The Petersons' house had never been abandoned for years. The Petersons' house had been abandoned for years, ever since the former family that lived there was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The case was never solved, and we knew right away what had happened. Jason, a true crime podcaster, hears about the house and decides to investigate for the last episode. He's made a name for himself, debunking ghost stories and uncovering the real, often tragic reasons behind them. But this time, he's determined to prove that Peterson's house is nothing more than an abandoned building with a dark, dark past. Jason arrives at Meadowbrook Drive late in the afternoon, just as the sun is beginning to set. The house looks worse in person, its windows boarded up, the paint peeling, and the lawn overgrown with weeds. The neighbors, which watched him from behind their curtains, but no one dares to approach him. He sets up his recording equipment and begins the investigation, documenting every step as he echoes and echoes and echoes. Inside the house is dark and cold, the air thick with the smell of mildew of something else even worse, something metallic like blood. Jason breaks it off, assuring them he is not bleeding. There is something off about this place, something he hadn't quite put his finger on. The room is feel too quiet, the shadows too deep. His fears, his noises, scratching, whispering, shadow figures, but every time he spins to listen, they won't let him. And every time he steps in to listen, they disappear. He pushes on, determined to get into the bottom of the mystery. As night falls, Jason reaches the basement door. It's the only part of the house that he hasn't explored, and he can't shake the feeling that something important is down there. He opens the door, and the smell of decay hits him like a physical force. He hesitates, but his curiosity drives him forward. The basement is pitch black, and his flashlight barely cuts through the darkness. The walls are damp, the floor covered in third layer of. As he moves further into the basement, the air grows colder, and the whispers return, louder this time, more intense. Jason's flashlight flickers on and off briefly before the darkness. He sees figures moving out at the edge of the light. The shadows that should have been there, he hasn't. You see, folks, Jason's flashlight flickered on, and in the brief moment of darkness, he sees figures moving out of the light, out of the edges of the light, shadows that shouldn't be there. His heart racing as he realizes the house isn't empty. The Petersons are still here, the spirits trapped in the basement, reliving their final moments over and over and over again. The whispers grew into screams, and Jason felt a presence behind him, cold fingers bursting the back of his neck. He spins out and around, his flashlight illuminating the ghostly figures of Mrs. Peterson, her eyes hollow, her mouth twisted into a scream of their terror. Behind her, the rest of the family stands, their bodies broken and bloody, their eyes fixed on him. Jason tries to run, but the basement doors slam shut, trapping him inside. The spirits close in, their whispers turning into a company of voices, accusing him, blaming him for their deaths. The air grows colder, and Jason feels his breath leave him, leave his body, freezing as the spirits drew closer. In his last moment, Jason realizes that the Petersons aren't just trapped, they're angry, vengeful, and they've been waiting for someone like him to come along. He was so focused on saving the mystery that he didn't even see the danger until it was too late. The next morning, the neighbors noticed that Jason's car is still parked in front of the house, but there is no sign of Jason. The police are the police are called, but when they reach the house, when they search the house, they find nothing, no equipment, no notes, no signs that Jason was even there. The basement door is locked and no one dares to open it. Jason's podcast remains unfinished, his fate a mystery. The house on the Meadowbrook Drive remains empty, its windows dark and silent. But at night, if you listen closely, you might hear the faint sounds a man's voice desperately narrating a story that no one will ever leave. I want to thank everybody here tonight that was watching our frightful tale. We have one more tale to tell you here tonight, folks. One more frightening tale. One more horrifying story. I call this tale The Faceless Man. Before we begin, everybody in the chat room, thank you for being here with us tonight. We hope this final tale, the most frightful tale of them all, does not disappoint. Sit back, relax, get comfortable, because you're about to go on a ride like you have never seen or felt before. This story I call The Faceless Man. In a bustling city where the streets are always crowded and the nights are never truly quiet, there's a chilling rumor that circulates among the locals. They speak of a faceless man, a figure who appears in the shadows, his face blank and featureless like a smooth sheet of clay. Those who see him are never the same, haunted by nightmares and whispers that follow them wherever they go. The faceless man doesn't kill his victims, but he takes something far more valuable. He takes their identity. You see Allison, a young woman working long hours in high stress job, hears the rumors but dismiss them as urban legends. She's too focused on her creepy. She's too focused on her career to worry about the ghost stories. But when she starts seeing strange things on her late night walks home, she begins to wonder if there's more to the legend than she first thought. It starts with suitable occurrences, a shadow moving just out of sight, a feeling of being watched, a strange figure standing at the corner, her vision that disappears when she turns to look. Allison tries to brush it off, telling herself it's just her imagination, but the tricks on her are often too many. But the sightings become more frequent, and the figures begin to take on a more definite shape. A tall man in a long coat, his face completely black, no eyes, no mouth, no features at all, just a smooth, pale surface where a face should have been. Allison's username. Allison's unease grows into a fear as the fearless man starts approaching and appearing closer and closer and closer to her home, standing silently in the shadows, always watching. She confides into her friends, but they laugh it off, telling her it's just stress and lack of sleep. But Allison wants to believe them. But the faceless man's presence is becoming impossible to ignore. He doesn't speak, he doesn't move, he just watches. One night, as Allison walks home from work, she feels the fearless man's presence more stronger than ever. The streets are unusually quiet, the usual city noise muted as if the world is being holding its breath. She quickens her pace, her heart pounding in her chest, but the air feels thick and heavy, making it hard to move away. Her faceless head still tilts slightly, as if considering her. Allison feels a cold wave of terror wash over her. She tries to run, but her feet won't move. It's as if rooted to the spot. The fearless man raised a hand, his fingers long and thin and pointing directly on her. Allison feels a strange sensation like something is being pulled from her. Her vision blurs as she feels herself fading, her thoughts slipping away, as if someone is earring her from existence. Allison tries to go about her day, but something feels wrong. People she knows don't seem to recognize her, treating her like a stranger. Her reflection in the mirror looks the same, but there's something off about it. Something she can't put her finger on. As she as the days pass, Allison's sense of self begins to erode. Allison's sense of self begins to erode. She forgets small things at first, her favorite foods, her daily routines, but quickly e- escalates. She forgets her own name, her past, who she is. The people around her seem to forget her too, as if she's fading from the movement mirrors. She's fading from existence. It's as if she's being a ghost in her own life, a stranger to herself. One night, as she's walking down the same street where she first encountered the faceless man, she sees him again. This time, he's not watching her. He's walking away, disappearing into the shadows. Allison feels a strange sense of resignation as she realizes that he didn't just steal her identity, he replaced it. She's becoming like him, a faceless feature with no past, no future, just old empty evidence, just old empty existence. Allison's transformation is complete. She no longer remembers who she was, and she looks in the mirror. She sees nothing but a blank, featureless face staring back at her. She becomes the faceless man, doomed to wander the streets, searching for the next person to take her place. The city moves on, unaware that the faceless man has claimed another victim. The legend continues to circulate, a ghostly story told in hushed tones, but no one knows the real horror. Isn't the faceless man himself. It's the fate of those he leaves trapped behind, forgotten by the world, erased from existence, their souls lost in darkness forever. You have been listening to the Fright Files. I want to thank everybody who survived all the way till the end. But if you had to bail out early, you've been forewarned. This has been the Fright Files. I'm Dr. Fright. Stay here. Next week, we'll be back with more frightful tales. Soon, you will be able to buy a Fright Files t shirt. And with that being said, I must go back to my depths of hell. But I leave you with these chilling thoughts. Are these stories just stories? Or are they true tales waiting for their next victim?